Yes.
And our alternate is
Mrs. Stoynoff.
Mrs. Stoynoff. Thank you. We have the establishment of our regular meeting dates. I think there are some that we've adjusted just from the initial board member availability, and obviously these will be what we shoot for, and we might change those in case something comes up, but right now they'll be scheduled, and we'll post these on the website once the meeting is over. So do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting dates as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And just as a quick aside, those will be at the 6:30 timeframe. Obviously, today we have another group that's coming in here on our regular scheduled meeting, so that's why we changed the time for today. Item number 6, the delegation of authority to obligate school districts for specific activities and to appoint certain support personnel. Again, these are all the things that the district kind of uses on a day-to-day basis that we give general authorization for Mrs. Snowberger and Mr. Miller to use as they see fit. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Under the general authorizations, item A and B there, the Suburbanite Akron Beacon Journal, Canton Repository, and Southside News Leader, designated as the district's official newspapers. And item B, adopted are the existing bylaws and policies for the board's own operation, as well as the operation of the school system. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. And Mr. Cohen is the second, I presume?
Yep.
Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Hurdlick,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody have any comments in general? Just move on. So if we have a motion, so what we'll do is we'll after we adjourn this meeting, we'll recess for 5 minutes and start at 6 o'clock for the regular meeting for the month of January. Do I have a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli, and thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. See you in a few minutes. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Green Local School District meeting for the month of January. Mrs. Snowberger, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Herdlick?
Here.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Here.
Mrs. Finelli?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Would you all please rise and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As you can see, Mr. Miller will not be joining us this evening. He is deep in the throes of influenza A, I believe. So it is, man, it is going crazy. So hopefully quick recovery for him and his family for that. We'll move on into item number 3, the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoyanov. Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Herdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. We have no need for executive session at this time. Any visitors or anything that would like to speak on behalf of the things that were passed in the agenda, please let us know that you're here and without any fear of handcuffs or anything else like that. So I had to work that in there. I figured I'd get that out of the way quick. Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 6, the superintendent and treasurer report. I guess that will be done by the treasurer.
Sure. January is traditionally Board of Education Appreciation Month. So the district decided to give the board members flowers and ferns, and also a treat from the West Side Bakery with a little token of our appreciation of how we appreciate you every day, not just in January. We also received a plaque from Governor Kasich's office. It says, "The service provided by the members of Ohio's city, village, local, and joint vocational boards of education and educational service centers governing boards is critical to ensuring high-quality public education for Ohio school children. Through partnerships with teachers, school administrators, staff, and parents, school board members provide vital leadership and support for schools, and we thank you for your service and for the positive difference you make throughout the state." And it's signed by the governor and by the Lieutenant Governor, Mary Taylor. And we also have a plaque for each of you for our appreciation for what you do for us throughout the year. So this one's for Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
This one's for Mr. Cohen.
Thank you.
This one's for Sally.
Thank you.
This one's for Mr. Herdlick. And this one's for Katie Stoyanov. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And that was supposed to be Mr. Miller's job, but so I did the best I could with it. The presents were put together, I have to say, by Rhonda Capper. She worked really hard on that the last couple of days with the flowers and the treats from West Side Bakery, so I didn't want to take credit for that.
Thank you very much.
That it?
That's all I have. Yes.
Okay. That's all the appreciation? No, I'm just
That's
kidding.
that was 3 minutes. Come on.
You didn't put together a song for us?
A little presentation.
That's Mr. Little Miller's job.
Well, I believe on behalf of the board, thank you, especially to Mrs. Capper for putting those together. And, it's certainly an honor and a privilege, I think, for all 5 of us to serve the community in this way and to work with such a great administrative staff as well. And it's good. It's good. We're in a good spot, and we appreciate all the work that you do as well. So,
Thank you.
moving on for item 7, the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes for December the 18th, 2017?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Herdlick. Second?
Second.
Mrs. Stoyanov? Mrs. Snowberger?
Mr. Herdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item number 8. The superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the following donation from Martin and Stephanie Plummer. The Dynavox Maestro speech device, approximate value of $7,000. And the device has been donated to the Greenwood Early Learning Center Speech Department. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Finelli.
Second.
And thank you, Mr. Cohen. Mrs. Snoberger?
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Under the new business header for the consent calendar note, items under the consent calendar are considered routine to be enacted under one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the board votes unless a board member requests an item be clarified or even removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff,
Second.
and thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Snoberger, do you have any comments or anything for it? Anything that Mr. Miller wanted to highlight or you wanted to highlight?
We do have a few. On the first item is Joya Mitchell. She did a phenomenal job. She was our interim student services director while Alana was on maternity leave. I can say just from day-to-day interaction, she really stepped up. Also going over the high school to take care of the stuff she really needed to do there. But she also was there for us every day, and I think she did a really great job. I think everybody in the cab, it's a big jump into the cab, especially when you come to directors' meetings. And she held her own there pretty well. So the other one is on Section 5. We actually hired Zach, or actually put him on the agenda, Zach Garber. He started over the winter break as our new IT generalist. If you remember, Jason left a little while ago, a month ago. So he started over the break. It's kind of a vital time when school's not in session. That's when they get a lot of things done, where they clean up the servers. They need a lot of, it really helps when the staff is not here. So he was willing to come in those days over break and work on an hourly basis as he was needed, on top of his other full-time job that he was resigning from. And then he actually started full-time with us on the 8th. So.
Wow, outstanding. Item number 6, weapons. Mr. Lohmiller, we talked a little bit beforehand for the meeting. Would you mind just giving us just a quick, I think a lot of times there's some confusion as to what all of these, the different policies and, I have this and I have that and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
If you could clarify that for us.
The three policies are pretty much the same, with the exception of one is dealing with certified staff, one is dealing with classified staff, then one is dealing with visitors and guests to our buildings. And the simple phrase, I guess, is that no weapons on school property. And so there are a couple exceptions that are listed on there, obviously, for our emergency personnel, if they would have something on them. If there is a case in which maybe there's a historical lesson and there is a firearm from a historical time period that may be studied at the time, that would be permitted as long as the principal gives permission for that. But basically, those three policies are that weapons are not permitted within the school safety zone.
So even though somebody might have a CCW or something like that, it's not.
Correct.
There's no blanket privilege for them to be carrying on school property.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
just in the school.
School property,
School
yeah,
property.
exactly. The school safety zone is how I believe it's worded in there, and so that's basically any of the school district property.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Sure. Any other questions? Mrs.
Mr.
Snoberger? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do we want to talk just quickly about B?
We're going to do B separate, I
Be
think.
separate.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry. I didn't see the line there. My fault. Sorry.
That's all right. Mrs. Snoberger?
Mrs. Stoynoff?
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Item B, the superintendent and treasurer recommend the Board of Education approve the resolution authorizing the board to apply for an active planning process with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission Classroom Facilities Assistance Program. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen,
Second.
and thank you, Mr. Hurdlick. Mrs. Snoberger, you want to expound on that?
Sure. This is a really fancy, long way to say that we still want to be on the list with OSFC. Probably 15, 18 years ago, OSFC was formed by the state to try to help districts build school buildings. where they couldn't necessarily build them on their own. If you were first on the list, which happened to be Wyndham in Portage County, they actually paid nearly 100% of a school building for them way back then. A lot of things happened over the time. They realized that the districts with the least amount of money, they couldn't necessarily afford to keep new buildings like that open. So a lot of changes have happened. And the reason that that whole line at the bottom has so many words in it is because as they kept changing the rules, they kept changing the name of what it was called. So it used to just be something really simple as OSFC, and it's morphed into this. This doesn't mean that we're building a building tomorrow. It doesn't mean that we're putting a levy on. All it means is that Green's turn has finally come up, and there's a possibility that it could come up in the next 5 years. And in order for us to stay in our place on the list, we have to say that, yes, we're interested. The OSFC does, some behind the scenes, looking at our buildings and things to see, and it's all based on wealth basis. In the dreamland of 18 years ago, all the school districts in Ohio would have been finished by now, and there's still 150 or more left to be even considered. So all this really does is say, yes, keep us on the list. If we gave our spot away, if we didn't do this by today, on January 15th is the deadline for this group of people who are eligible between the next 4 and 5 years. They would say, okay, Green is out for the next 2 years. Let's go talk to the people next on the list and ask them if they want to be on the list. And the problem with the timeline is, let's say there's 50 people that are actively on the list right now. If 49 of them say, nope, we don't want to do it anymore, we're not going to go for a levy, then number 50 has to be ready to say, okay, well, we'll consider going on the ballot. So when you ask the state, okay, well, what does this mean timeline-wise? They can't tell you the answer because the first 5, they usually fund, depending on the size, they can fund anywhere from 2 to 5 buildings. So if the first 2 say, yes, we want to be in it and we need a lot of work, those 2 are the only people eligible for that whole school year. So to try to say, well, when do you think this will happen? Even the state can't tell you the answer to that. So this is just a really formal way to say we still want to be on the list. We don't want to give up our spot whenever our spot comes. So.
Yeah, well put. And, the meeting that we attended with their rep was that they can't do anything until we take this resolution. It's not binding in any way, but if we don't do it, you don't even get a spot at the table. So it's and there's, oh my gosh, there was a gazillion different. You can defer with some renovations. You can redo classrooms. You don't have to. And it was just, it's kind of mind-boggling what they've kind of expanded it into in order to, I think, maybe try to help out as much as possible, whenever possible, for the district. So it was, I think it was probably 6 or 7 years ago that we did this, or even looked at the last time. It might even be longer than that.
It was the summer before I came.
Yeah, and so, and every now and
9?
yeah, 9 years ago when we even thought about, hey, what happens if? And now it's just, it's. I don't think we're doing our duty as a board if we're not looking a little bit forward and a little bit ahead, and just being prepared for whatever opportunities or whatever presents itself. Again, non-binding in any way. If we had the opportunity, obviously, we would look into that and be in touch with the community to see what people want to do, and then move forward with what's best in the district. So I appreciate Jeff and Edie putting this together, and Wendell, I think, had a hand in it as well, to at least get us an invite to the party, so to speak. So, any other comments?
How often do we have to do this resolution? When is it necessary to do?
I think what he explained
when we're
was
close?
Well, he explained any time, even if you want to be considered at any time, you have to have this resolution done, because there's some things that the Facilities Commission has to do prior to you being considered, but they can't do until you do this resolution. It's really strange.
But this resolution is then an indefinite resolution, once we pass it.
Right.
Yeah.
And
They
it's not
meet-
like we have to come back and do it again
Right.
next year.
Yearly.
This-
They meet once a year. They meet in February each year. And so whenever they want to make a pool of eligible districts that are still left. So we just happen to be at the bottom of that new pool now.
Gotcha.
So now that we've done this, like, you won't have to do it again next year, right? I mean, that's the way they said, that once we've said yes, now we've held our spot until it comes up to the time where the board decides with the community, yes, do we want to go for this levy and they'll help us pay or renovate a building, or no, we've just decided that we're going to do it on our own or whatever.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a bit of a complex
Yeah.
project, but until you put this key into the door, then you don't get anywhere.
Right.
So. Anything else? Mrs. Snowburn?
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick,
Yes.
Mrs. Stoyanov,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes,
Mrs. Finelli.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
thank you. Anybody on the clipboard?
No.
Jason, Mrs. Fenn. Board accommodations. Mr. Hurdlick, why don't we start with you this evening?
All right, thanks, Bob. Nice job to our boys varsity basketball team. This past Friday, they knocked off the defending state champion, Jackson Polar Bears, here at home. It was a very entertaining game. It was a nice game to watch. So congratulations to the boys and Coach Kinsley on a well-earned victory and hopefully continued success throughout the year. They got North Canton on the road this coming Friday. So congratulations to them and all of our winter teams so far that are progressing through their seasons, and continued good luck to them for the rest of their season. Also, next month, all of our juniors will be taking the ACT test at the high school. It's a nice feature that the state ODE had established that gives, it's a free test, so a lot of things that come from ODE aren't always pleasant on our end, but this is a nice feature, obviously, for our juniors that can take the ACT right here at our local school. More information will be coming out in the mail to all the parents of the current juniors to explain what's going to go on and how to go about the process. So good luck to all the juniors taking the ACT this next month. Also, to put on your calendar, the Celebration of Education, sponsored by the Green Schools Foundation, will be February 24th. So that's about 5 or 6 weeks away, at the high school. Very similar to the way it's been in the past, where we have local businesses come in, and obviously that we also then, the main focus is to, for all of our students to see everything they've accomplished throughout the year, whether it's the choirs or the ensembles, and I know we do a few plays for the younger kids, see their artwork. It's just a nice feature where we can celebrate obviously all the work that our kids do throughout the school year. It's just a nice community event. We'll do a few things different this year than in the past. We'll start with a pancake breakfast this year, something a little bit different, from 8 to 11, and the actual celebration, it runs from 9 to 2. And then after breakfast is over at 11, we're going to turn the commons into like a little cafe area where we can bring in the ensembles and the choirs to entertain people that just want to come in and have a cup of coffee or something and enjoy the talents of our students. So just a few things that are a little bit different, but it's obviously always a great event, and we always appreciate all the local businesses that partner with us that make this a successful event. So put it on your calendar, and we look forward to seeing everyone there on the 24th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. I know it's been a challenging couple of weeks with the weather, and I know it's frustrating for the parents and great for the students who have had so many days off. But I want to thank the administration and Jeff Miller for waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning every time to check the weather forecast, go out there, drive around, walk around, and ultimately, he and the rest of the administration always have the safety of our kids as the number one priority. And so I very much appreciate that. And I'm sure there'll be a few more snow days coming, or at least days that are a little bit iffy, maybe even as soon as early next week. So we have that to look forward to. And Jeff, as soon as he's done recovering from the flu, has a few early mornings to really look forward to. I also just wanted to say how pleased I am to have my 3 board colleagues back. it's a pleasure serving with each and every one of them, and it's been a pleasure to serve on this board with them, and I think we've got a great team here, along with the fantastic administration and great staff in place, and I look forward to another 2 years of keeping this rodeo going.
Sounds good. Yeehaw, I think.
Yeah.
Mrs. Spinelli.
I don't have much. I just want to thank everyone for bringing us all back together, again, for voting for us, a community. And tell all of the teachers, thank you for last year for doing such a wonderful job, and Happy New Year this year, and keep up the good work.
Mrs. Stoynoff.
Yes, to echo the comments of Mrs. Finelli, it's great to be back. My husband is here to support me and my mom. My mom's kind of famous. I go places, people ask, "Where's your mom?" Nobody wants to see me anymore, but it's good. And it was an honor to have Summit County Councilwoman Paula Prentice swear me in tonight. She's not only a mentor, but a good friend, and I thank her for her service to the community and for coming here tonight and swearing me in. Good luck to everyone in their second semester endeavors, as we finally have managed now to get back and start the second semester. So good luck to everyone, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoynoff. And in closing, again, you echo the same sentiments as my colleagues. It's certainly an honor and a privilege to be back here on the board. I also appreciate your confidence in me and for the leadership of the board again for this year as well, and I certainly appreciate that and the support. One thing to add, Mr. Hurdlick, it was actually a clean sweep of Jackson because we beat the girls that week too, last week, which was an excellent game. They had one of the best players probably in Northeast Ohio that's going to Maryland. So and they held her to 20 points, which held her to 20 points. I think her average is about 40, so that was good.
It's always good to beat Jackson.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. One of the big things on the inclement weather and everything else, it is never an easy decision, and even when we do have the IPI days and the transportation folks are out there, I mean, just a huge kudos to them for getting our students safely to school and then back home. And they certainly don't cut any corners when it comes to the safety of our kids, and neither does Jeff when it comes to making that decision. One of the things as we get through, and I'm sure everybody knows that the flu season is hot and heavy right now. That it's usually I think it usually peaks in February, right? And they just every night on the news, it's just another volume of people that are going there. And my wife works down at Akron Children's Hospital, and they said it's just absolutely insane how much just the census is of down there with people that are testing positive for flu. One thing that I would just ask the parents really is that if your child has any kind of symptoms or you suspect any kind of symptoms, please keep them at home because that's the last thing we need is more people coming in to pass it around. It's just that time of the year. Welcome to Northeast Ohio, but it's everywhere, I think, this year. And like they said, I think the best remedy for trying to keep yourself away from the flu bug is simply washing your hands and repeatedly and that kind of thing. So try to take care of yourselves.
And if you haven't already, get your flu shot.
Absolutely. Even though they say it's not very effective this year, but they still say
it provides some protection still for this strain.
Still alleviates some of the severity, I believe. So.
Yeah.
That's my public service announcement for the night.
Dr. Campbell.
Well, and with that, we have no need for executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs.
Second.
Stoynoff. Thank you, Mrs. Finelli. Mrs. Stoberger.
Mrs. Stoynoff,
Yes.
Mrs. Finelli,
Yes.
Mr. Hurdlick,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and see you